Hello and welcome. My name's Travis Miner, and I'm very excited to be talking today with Meredith Principe of Campus Bound Education. Hello and welcome, Meredith.
Thanks, Travis. Happy to be here.
What we are going to be discussing today is a question that comes up for a lot of students and their families, especially when it comes to deciding which classes to take and really how to prioritize certain things in terms of the limited time they have available. So the topic today is going to be rigor and how colleges think about that. So to start with, Meredith, could you tell us a little bit about what rigor actually is and how colleges might think about it?
Sure. So when we talk about rigor related to a student's high school curriculum or a college application, we're talking about the challenge level of the student's courses and overall schedule. So I think one way that we all think of rigor or a rigorous curriculum is in the form of higher level classes. Many high schools will offer college prep classes and then honors classes or AP classes. Those honors and AP classes add more challenge or more rigor to that curriculum. Rigor can also come in the form of the classes themselves. So most students might carry 5 core academic courses throughout each high school year, but one student who might choose to take a second foreign language, for example, or might choose to double up in a subject of interest like science or social studies. And that can add rigor to a student's curriculum too, is the extra courses. So anything that makes that curriculum or schedule overall more challenging. Colleges will carefully review a student's entire curriculum over the course of their 4 high school years. They'll look at every single course they took at the challenge level of each of those courses. They'll look for trends if students' curriculums have become more challenging or less challenging over time, and how that matches with the grades that they've earned, if their grades have gone up or down over time. So really, I think one piece that's really important to know when colleges are looking at a student's curriculum is they always look at it within the context of what is offered at that high school. There is no college out there that expects students to not only exhaust their high school curriculum, but also seek more. They want to make sure that they're not penalizing students for only taking what's offered. So if your high school offers 3 AP classes and you've taken 3 AP classes, great, you've probably taken one of the most challenging curriculums that your school offers. If your school offers 45 AP classes and you've taken 0, then that's a different level of challenge. Bottom line, and we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, as we continue, it's all about finding the right amount of challenge that's right for you. But that's how colleges will assess it, is they'll look at what's offered at your school, what you've taken over the course of the whole 4 years, and look for trends within there.
That's really helpful. So it sounds like colleges tend to have a good understanding of what options a student has available to them course-wise. I'm curious, sort of on the student and family side of things, when it comes time for course selection and students are making those big choices, how do you think it's most strategic and also sort of healthiest for families to think about rigor as they're making some of those decisions?
Sure. So I think with any advice that we give about the college search process and making decisions with college in mind, I think it's really important to become informed, make an educated decision, but it doesn't mean that you make the decision that every college would prefer or that most colleges would prefer. So you want to know how your decisions may impact your college admissions options, but don't make a decision just because of college admissions. And so the example I would say there is as a student or as a parent of a student who's trying to make a decision about curriculum, first thing to do is consider where you're at. What classes are you currently taking? How challenging are they? And how much time are you spending on them? Are you cruising through those classes, barely putting in any homework and acing those exams? Maybe add some more challenge. If you are really struggling in the class that you're in and it's a college prep class, please don't bump up to the honors or AP level. That's not where you want to be. You want to first improve where you are before you jump up to something more challenging. It does not do you any good to take challenging classes and do poorly in them. That doesn't help anyone, least of all the student. So I think in those cases, you want to start with where you are. How much are you putting in time for? Are you staying up super late already with homework? In which case, maybe you dial that challenge level down a little bit so that you can get some sleep, and you can, like, your health has to be the most important part of this process. And first figure out where you are. When you feel that you're ready to take on more challenge, that's when it's time to say, okay, what else is offered for me and where can I step it up?
So I guess I'm thinking about a situation where a student says, I could do more. I'm working hard, but I could work harder. I could take on a little bit more challenge. How should a student go about making the decision about where to push? Should they be taking the most rigorous courses they can across the board? Or is there an element of picking and choosing? I'm going to stick with this one that's a little bit easier so that I can go further in this one for a certain reason.
Right. I think a lot of that depends on the student. And I think you do have to think of the entire curriculum when you make choices like that, right? So most naturally, I think if a student feels that they have some bandwidth for a little more challenge, well, then consider the classes that you love, or the classes that come most naturally to you, either or both. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not. But the class where you would be willing and eager to put in a little more time, or the class where you think, yeah, I think this class is kind of easy, I think I could bump it up a notch. Start with those. But consider your overall curriculum. You might find that as a student, you might say, hey, I think I can up my challenge level in any one of my classes, so let's up it in all of them. Well, that might be too much as an overall workload for you. So usually I recommend start with a little bit. And then if you've got room, the next year, add some more. So really try to gauge what you think you can handle. And that's different for every student, of course. But start with the subjects you like the most, or the subjects that come most easily to you. And make sure you don't ignore the overall workload when you consider adding challenge.
It sounds to me, and I find that this is often so important for students, that a lot of this really can and should be a family conversation that involves some reflection on what's going well, where there's opportunities, and also how to maintain that balance. I feel like so often we feel that pressure. Take all the APs, take the hardest course you can, and there's ways to be strategic and thoughtful about it so it's sustainable. Now, the question that I get asked by students and families all the time, and I don't know that I have a good answer to it. Is it better to have an A in an easier class, or let's say a B- in a harder class?
So the answer is to get the A in the harder class, but that's not really the question that you
Good answer, though.
So, ideally, that's the situation. Not everybody can do that. I usually think of a 1 grade differential and nothing below a B-. So in the example you gave me, an A in an easier class or a B- in a harder class, that's more than a 1 grade differential. If you had said a B in a harder class, I'd say take the harder class and get the B. But if you're going to slip down to a B- or a C+, go with the easier class. I think the challenge level is usually kind of equivalent to about a grade of grace period in your grade, and so that's what I would lean for. Certainly still the most challenging schools out there, the most selective schools out there would want the A's in the harder curriculum, but again, that's not reasonable. You have to make the choice that's best for you. So if you think about a 1 grade differential, that seems to be a pretty good rule of thumb. Obviously, it's hard to know exactly what your grades would be when you're talking about it in a hypothetical situation, but trying to get a feel from students who've taken those classes before. How rigorous are they at your high school? What's the workload like? Maybe from somebody who has similar strengths as you, and really try to gauge it that way.
That is such a helpful guide for students. I hope it's okay that I quote you on that in the future.
Of course.
The last question that I have right now is about students who maybe from an early stage in their high school career have a pretty clear sense of what they want to study or what career path they envision for themselves, whether that's engineering or something in the humanities. How might that shape a student's decisions about which classes to take and where to seek rigor?
Sure. So I think in the beginning, I guess I would say that most colleges are hoping that students in high school will build a base or a foundation of subject matter knowledge, a foundation of critical thinking skills, and they're looking for a broad education from students in high school. Most colleges do not prefer students to specialize too much in high school. And that's important. A lot of students are pretty undecided about what they want to study, but those who are very clear and have tested it and explored it and are really sure of what they want to study, sometimes there's a real interest in focusing. I'm going to skip social studies after the second year because it's not required at my high school, and I'm just going to focus right in on science because that's what I want. Sometimes that might be a good choice, but usually you're better off taking the 5 core classes as long as you can, unless one of them is really the bane of your existence. Then maybe you drop that one to double up in a subject that you really like. So start with trying to gain that broad base. And then certainly there are some schools that admit and look for different characteristics, but when they admit students by major. So larger universities tend to do this. If they have a separate school of engineering, a separate school of business, a separate school of nursing, those are some areas where they are known for often looking at different things in their candidates to make sure that as best as they can that student will be successful. So for example, if you are really interested in engineering, but you have not yet gotten to the level of calculus in your high school, if it's offered, you might be at a disadvantage at some schools. If you are interested in business, colleges would like for you to pursue the most rigorous math program that you can. That often means calculus, not statistics, even though you might think statistics would be more beneficial in the world of business. So there's some preferences that they may have there. Obviously with nursing and with engineering too, they're looking at sciences and math as well. So there are some areas where your subject matter in high school might play a role. But in most cases, you should be really focusing on that broad education in high school. In college is where you'll specify. College is where you will really hone in and focus. And that's what they want. They want you to come in with the baseline covered and then take their courses in order to really specialize in the subject area that you're choosing.
I so appreciate what you mentioned about also testing out that this really is something the student wants to be interested in. I mean, and so often we hear students, many times it's the summer after junior year, that whether it's a job or an internship, but if they think they know what they want to study, an opportunity to dip their toes in the pool, see, is this really something that that I know I want to pursue before allowing that to shape some of these big decisions that they're making.
I think some of that pressure to choose something, to choose a major, has come as college has become so much more expensive, right? That it's really hard as a parent to make the decision to invest this much money in something when your student says, I don't know what I want to do. And yet most high school graduates don't know what they want to do. And those who think they know change their major usually in college. So it's one of the things that we recognize when you're making an investment in college. It's not necessarily a career track that you're investing in. It's an education that you're investing in. And if you can move forward knowing that, okay, my child will eventually choose a major and it will be okay. It's okay for students to go in undecided. And that's perfectly fine. But I do think a lot of students feel pressure to choose a major or choose a career path from early on because the stakes seem really high right now.
What a wonderful message about how we should be thinking this is an education rather than a career that sets students up to have lots of options.
Right.
Are there any other things that you would want to be sure students or families know or are thinking about when it comes to rigor in the college process?
I just think it's really important to make the decisions that are right for you as a student. Don't craft your entire high school experience around the hopes of being admitted to a certain college or a certain type of college. You can do all the right things and still not get in. And that's no way to live your high school experience. So gather the information, but make the decisions that are right for you. If you really can't stomach another year of French, then maybe don't take it, depending on how many years you already have. But maybe don't take it that last year. And maybe you double up in something else, extra science, extra social science, an internship, something else. You have to make the decisions that are right for you, even if it doesn't seem like it's what you hear most colleges want. I would also say there are no absolutes, and except maybe for that one. There are no absolutes and no hard and fast rules. I hear all the time people say, well, exactly how many APs do I need to have to be competitive at X, Y, or Z college? There's no rule. There's no college out there that says, well, if they don't have at least this many, forget it. So just remember, it's all much more flexible than that. It's much more holistic than that, even actually at larger universities where you would expect it to be kind of cut and dry and numbers driven. They're still numbers driven, yes, but they still pay attention to the people behind the numbers.
So important to remember, sometimes so difficult to remember, but so important. Thank you so much, Meredith, for sharing your time and your expertise. If folks are interested in learning more about Meredith and her team's work, you can visit campusbound.com and learn how they can help support your student. Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so
Meredith.
much. Thanks, Travis.